Good morning. Great to be here. Good afternoon or evening, whenever you're listening to this. And happy holidays. Christmas is getting near. The end of 2020 is approaching. I realize that we all have been talking about how crazy 2020 has been. But we'll probably keep talking about how crazy 2020 has been. I think it's just so hard to believe that so much has happened. I was thinking earlier today about last year at this time, we had a Christmas or end of the year, beginning of the new year planning meeting. And, we were talking about how challenging it is to drive to midweek with all the traffic, with the commuting, and how were we going to solve that? That was probably one of the big issues. And it actually ended up to be a non-issue, like just so crazy, so unpredictable to think of all that has happened. And I think it was more than was on our radar. There were things that we would not have predicted, would not have thought of that were happening, that happened. And, things probably that were impossible. And yet, I think that is life. I mean, usually we kind of just go along, and then something will happen, but maybe it'll happen just to us or just our family or just our church, but to have something so big, so huge happen to us all is kind of hard to wrap our brains around. It kind of made me think about, some of the things that we've been through as a family or as a couple, Robert and I. And, I was thinking about how, we were going through a transition in Miami, a leadership transition. We were in all these meetings. We hadn't seen the news or hadn't watched any TV. And Robert had gone to the store for some groceries, and everybody was going crazy. There were shelves, empty shelves, women fighting in the aisle over water, all kinds of craziness. And he found out that a hurricane was coming. And, we went through that. He ended up getting all these really important things, took some cash out of the bank, got some charcoal so we could cook the things that were going to be, without electricity in the freezer, all kinds of different things, batteries, water, etc. But, I afterwards, I still remember being in the backyard. This was a house that Sam and Jerry Lang owned that we lived in at the time. We rented from them. And there was a lake in the backyard. And normally a very peaceful environment, a really relaxing place you could go and pray, the little dock you could go sit at the edge and pray on. And the day after, or a couple days after, I don't even know when it was, I was sitting out there and it was completely different. There were trees fallen over. There were trees fallen on homes. There was a sailboat in our yard from someone else's house. There was, just chaos and trees and people and things happening. And then, one of those huge helicopters from the military flew over, and I felt like, oh my gosh, this is like a war zone that we're in, all like just in a matter of a night. You go to bed, it's coming, you wake up and everything's a mess. And in a lot of ways, that's how this year has felt. You can't always predict what life is going to bring. And when I think of all this, I think of what's happened, and there's one thing that I have been thinking of that kind of disturbs my soul a little bit. And that's when I hear people say, I can't wait for this year to be over. I can't wait to come into 2021. And I think it bothers me, one, because it makes me wonder, what have we done with 2021 or 2020? What have we learned? And it bothers me because I think there's a bit of assumption, maybe it's a little hope, I don't know, that 2021 is going to be different. And I'm not so sure. It'll be different. I don't think we're going to be surprised in the same way. But I don't know that it's going to be easier. And so I kind of want to just take this time. I'm actually recording December 10th. This is going to be the devotional for the 17th, so it's still a little bit ahead. But we have time to get our hearts in the right place, to get our minds in the right place, to surrender our wills to God, to kind of evaluate where we're at, evaluate, how life has been, and make some decisions and move forward. And, I think it's really a good time not to wait till January 1st to set some goals, but to really take time to think about how this year has gone. And, to stop and look around and to really soak up what has happened and how have I reacted? How have I taken in these things? How am I doing? And, I think even asking ourselves, what has been revealed in me through this time? What has been revealed in my marriage, in my parenting, in my ability to teach kids, our patience, our sitting in quiet? How are we? How are we doing? And then also the question, whose will am I seeking, really? How has this disturbed me, disrupted me, bothered me? And why is that? Why did it? What are those goals that were so interrupted, that were so disturbed? I think of Matthew 6:10 talking about Jesus saying, pray this prayer, not my will, but yours be done. That's a pretty significant thing for Jesus to tell us to pray. Not my will, but yours. And I believe we have to keep that in our mind. I think even asking, how's my peace? How's my prayer life? How much am I learning? What new things am I learning? What am I growing in? How are my relationships, my friendships? And I realize I'm throwing a lot of things out there, and I don't mean for us to scrutinize and try to fix all of these things, but I'm saying these things to kind of give you a little checklist, which of these things are best to really go after and to work on. How are my relationships? How are my friends? How am I with my friends? Are we having great, honest, open communication? Are we encouraging each other, loving each other, looking out for each other? How's my husband? How's he doing? How are we? How are we communicating? How are we working together? How are my kids? Do I know what my kids are feeling or thinking? Or how am I helping them tell their story of life? And am I having an influence on that, or am I just letting them, raise themselves? How's my family? How's my mom, my aunts? Just do I know, which of these would help to work on in this next year? One of the things, what have I learned this year? What have I changed? What have I grown in? And then what are my priorities, and why are they my priorities? Who are my priorities? And, I think all of these things are important questions. And, if it's who are my priorities, do they know that they're my priority? Do they feel like they are my priority? Does it show in how I live my life? Does it show in the words I say that these people are my priority? All of these are, a lot of questions, but I think we need to ask these questions, or at least check how am I doing in these areas? And I think we'll all look at it and maybe we'll feel generally good about a lot of them and not so great about one or two of them. And that's when okay, this is what I really want to go after this year. This is what I want to pray about, what I want to look at, what I want to be different in, think differently about. It's funny because I heard someone say that you cannot end the year 2020, December 31st, as a victim and wake up January 1st, 2021 as a victor. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. We don't go to bed a victim, wake up, woohoo, I'm ready to set all these goals and, lose 100 pounds and run a marathon and, be an excellent mom and all of these things. It just doesn't work that way. We need to really, first of all, I think recognize, are there areas that we are victims in? And anyway, I want to look at Matthew 7:21. I think this is such a great scripture for where we're at. In 7:21, it's the wise and foolish builders. And it says, "Therefore, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." The first thing I think is these are Jesus's words to us. These are words, this is a story that Jesus told that we could learn from, that we could just remember in our being that this is important. What we build on is important. And I was looking at this, and the first thing that stood out to me is this is Jesus's words, and he says, if you put them into practice, if you put them into practice. And I think of the word put, it's like just do it, you do it. You put it into practice. And then to practice it is continually. You do it continually. You constantly are looking for how you can put Jesus's words into practice above our things that we naturally might put into practice. So instead of being prideful and arrogant and defensive, we're humble and we are looking at what we can change, and we apologize and we forgive and we move on. Like, that's just a little example, but putting into practice Jesus's words. And then, I think about the fact that, okay, this is Jesus, the creator, our example, our pioneer, our teacher, our coach. He is the one who knows how to live this life. And he's saying if we put his words into practice in our lives, we will survive the storms. I think about how it said, I think about how, why is this a wise man? Why? Well, one, because a wise man will follow Jesus's teachings. He did raise from the dead. He does know what he's doing, and all those reasons I just said. But also just to, a wise man plans for the future. What could be needed, what will be needed, just thinking about something beyond today. And then also hard times come. It's for survival purposes that we plan for the future so that we can withstand whatever may happen. Hard times come to us all. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you have, what you don't have. They come to us all, and they come in different ways. But, I think this is a really key thing, that this is the difference between being a victim and being a victor. Realizing that, being humble enough to realize hard times come to me. Hard times will come to me. Not just hoping they never will come to me, but planning for them to come to me. Planning that my character, my faith, my confidence, my trust will be secure enough that when those problems come to me, I will be okay with my God. And then, I thought of how a victim, and I'm not talking about someone who has been victimized by somebody and it was out of their control, or, people, there are accidents, there are things that happen to us that are not our fault, that are not because we think a certain way. They are out of our control, that people do to us, or circumstances, accidents, things like that. But I'm talking about the kind of victim who really kind of just has that in their back pocket, that they're not really ready for the future. They don't really know what they're going to do if. They're just hoping and wishing and not preparing. And I think that when we are not thinking, not planning, not redirecting, not correcting, not correcting ourselves, then something's going to happen that will knock us down, that could take us out. And, I think that if we've got to be proactive in how we live, that we train our kids, we teach our kids, we train ourselves, we do our best to put Jesus's words into practice and not just wait for the day that something happens. I mean, I can think of people in my mind that, they lose their job and they say, well, it's because the boss doesn't like me, and it's because blah, blah, blah. It's because of whatever. But really the truth is they didn't get to work on time. They didn't finish their assignments. They had bad attitudes. Sometimes people act like all these things happen to them, but it's not always the case. And I think, I'm not really trying to make this about being a victim, but I think sometimes spiritually, we can be like a victim. My old boyfriend just showed up at my house. What was I supposed to do? Whatever the situation, it just happens to me. But that's not being a person who builds their house on rock. I think of how building your house on rock, first of all, rock is hard. I mean, we know that. It takes quite a bit to drill into rock. It's solid, it's secure, it withstands water, it withstands wind, but it is harder to build on. And I know we've heard this story before, but I'm just saying this, think about it for your life. It is harder to build on rock. Sometimes you feel lonely, sometimes you feel impatient, sometimes you feel like, I'm just going to do it myself, I'm going to take things into my own hands. I mean, these are all things that tempt us not to build on Jesus's words. And yet, as hard as it is to build on rock, your foundation will be firm. You may, not always. You may feel sad sometimes. You may have things happen that are extremely difficult and challenging, but you will be okay if you're building on rock. And you know, the funny thing about building on rock is your house, when you're done, or, you know, when you're done, the house may look just like the house on sand. And the truth is, it may even look not as luxurious, not as pretty, not as whatever, because this person didn't have to dig into the rock. They just built on the sand, so they probably added some little frills and things to their house. The houses can look alike, but when the storms come and the waters roll and they get underneath that house, what that house is built on is going to show. And water has a way, a storm has a way of revealing what's underneath, revealing what really went into your life. What did you really plan for? And so I think it's important that we are like assessing right now. We have another year. I mean, hopefully, you know, we still have time to get ourselves solid and of course, you know, when I really stop and think about who's listening to this, I know some of you are doing this already. This is not news to you. You have been doing it. But if you haven't, do it. And if you are doing it, keep doing it, because it's going to be different. It's going to look different. I want to look at another scripture in Jeremiah 17, verse 7. It says, "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit." I love this analogy of it. Our faith, when we're putting our trust and our confidence in God, that we're like a tree planted by water. And, it's interesting because I think of how it says, first of all, this tree is planted by the water. It's in a good place. It has good resource. It has a good environment to be in. But it also says that that this tree will send out its roots towards the stream. That's awesome, because, okay, the tree is planted in a good place, and it could just be like, oh, well, that's fine. I'll be okay right here. But no, it grows towards the stream so that it will always have a connection to that stream. And I think about our relationship with God. We could be thinking, well, I'm fine. I'm a Christian. I know Jesus rose from the dead. I know that he'll be with me forever and ever. And, I'm okay. But no, you send your roots out toward the stream. Send your prayers, your petitions, your heart towards God. Invest yourself. Put your confidence in God. This is what it's like to be a disciple. This is what it should be like, that we're not just okay to be in the right place. We want to be connected. We want to be attached to the source. And, it says here that the tree will have no fear in drought. And I don't know, I love plants. And there's definitely been times where we have gone away and we forgot the plants, or someone forgot the plants. And they get kind of wilty. And if there's a strong heat, a strong, intensity of sun, and it's at that place, it can really cause damage to the plant. It can scorch it. It can kill it. If it doesn't have a good water source, but also if the water source is not within its leaves. If the leaves are wilty and already, shaky, then it could really kill the plant. Here it says that its leaves are always green. Why? Because they sent their roots toward the stream. I think that we have a lot at our hands. We have good people. I am constantly so amazed by the women in this region. Really amazed by who you are and what you've done and what you've gone through and what you've suffered through and how you've come through. I think it's remarkable. It's amazing how many strong women we have in our region. And I think, we all want to be strong. We all want to be close to God. But that doesn't just happen. That is purposeful. That is intentional. That takes work. And it takes just looking to God. I don't want to imply that by our struggle, by our own power, we make ourselves great, because that's not really what it is. But we put ourselves in a situation to receive from God what we need. And we put ourselves in a situation to, have prayers answered, to be comforted by God, to be taught by God. And that happens through, reading our Bibles, getting with sisters, asking questions, talking, confessing our sin, being open, and, living in the light, living a life that is in the light. So, I think just let's look at, what things we've learned. And I really want to say that. Let's look at what we've learned. Let's look at what we've changed. Let's look at how life is a new perspective now. And going back to hearing, I just want this year to be over. Honestly, let's never say that. Let's not say that anymore. This year has been hard. For me, this year has been hard. There are, my dad dying. I wish he were still here. I know there are deep pains and hurts that some of us have that we wish had not happened, but we are in the hands of God, and He is teaching us, and He is showing us, and we can use these experiences to grow, to, grow stronger, to dig our roots. I think that's the other thing is, I don't feel at all like this year was wasted, that we didn't get together, we didn't have services, I didn't get to hardly see any of you this year, and, I saw some of you on Zoom, but, I feel like this year has been so amazing in so many ways. We have learned new things. We have grown closer in a lot of ways. And I think it's remarkable that I could come here a little over a year ago and be super close to sisters. And of course, we're still getting to know each other and growing, but that's pretty amazing that God has put us in this time that we are not completely isolated. We have phones or we have computers. We have ways of connecting with people. And, I want us to think about what we have learned, what we want to do different. And not, it's funny because every time the new year comes, I have an aversion to the, we got to start on January 1st. And I totally have done that in my life. But I do want to look at what I want to change, and I do want to start over, but this is not a 50-yard dash. This is a marathon, and I think it's important to realize what we need to do is give ourselves to God, to work with us, to help us, to change us, to mold us, however he sees fit, and to keep trusting him and sending those roots out to the stream. So I love you. I hope you have a great holiday. Please put yourself in good situations and get what you need from your God and my God. I love you.
Thank you for joining us. I hope this has been educational and inspiring for you. If you'd like to know more, please join us by going to study.laicc.net, and we'll be happy to contact you and help you in any way we can.